Hello and welcome to my LGBTQIA readathon wrap-up. So about 2 weeks ago I watched a video on George Lester's channel who was talking about doing this readathon because it is, June was the Pride Month and he wanted to do this readathon that he and other booktuber did a year ago and they wanted to do it again. So they announced this LGBTQIA readathon, which meant that you had to pick some books that had queer or LGBTQIA plus themes or topics or characters, whatever, and kind of go with it and read for a whole week. And the readathon was between June 25th and July 1st. Which was great, and I thought that I would participate in that. However, I did not make a video about it, but I did make a blog post about my TBR. And as I'm a mood reader, I quite off the bat announced that I wasn't sure whether I'm going to read all of the books on my TBR or if I'm going to deviate from that list or whatnots. So without further ado, let's just get on with it. So the first book that I wanted to read was The Seafarer's Kiss by Julia Amber, and that book I have on my Kindle, but unfortunately I have not read it. I do intend to read it because it is a YA fantasy with mermaids, so yeah, I'll definitely read it. Another book that I wanted to read was And It Came to Pass by Laura Stone. That was, as well as The Farseer's Kiss, were two books recommended by Cece from the Problems of a Book Nerd book channel. And I really wanted to read that book, however, it also did not happen. I have it on my Kindle, but I just wanted to start with a physical copy of a book, so I kind of skipped my Kindle books at first. The next book that I also wanted to read, but I did not read, and I feel so bad with starting my wrap-up with the books that I did not read, but let's just, get rid of those and then start talking about the books that I have actually read. That was This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson, and that book was recommended many times by George himself, and I got really interested in that book, so I requested it on Overdrive, and I got it, but then it expired and I requested it again, but the book unfortunately did not become available for the readathon week, which was a bummer, so I had to substitute it with something else. So I skipped it, but hopefully once it becomes available, I will still be able to read it. Next, I picked Utena Manga, which I ordered and received recently, and I have not even held it yet, but I wanted to read it, but it's such a chunker that I thought I would start with something else, and once again, it was at a back burner, unfortunately. The next book on my list is actually the book that I finished, and that was Kaptara Volume Number 1, Fear Not, Tiny Alien, and that is a graphic novel, Volume 1 of a sci-fi LGBT series. I'm not really sure why this book got LGBT tag on Hoopla. I assume it's because the main protagonist is gay, but it's not really the point of the story. The point of the story is that it is a sci-fi graphic novel in which a group or a crew, a space crew on a spaceship gets sucked into a different, I don't want to say dimension, but into a different universe where they crash land on this absolutely crazy, filled with crazy animals and aliens planet, and they all get separated, and the main protagonist, he kind of gets sucked into this kingdom, and he's trying to find his crew members, but I don't even know. Oh God, I don't even know what to say about this volume. I really enjoyed the art. The art was interesting. The colors were very bright and really beautiful. However, I'm not a huge fan of weird and kind of disfigured aliens. It's just not my thing. I did not really like aliens per se. Also, I felt that the story didn't really have much plot because it was so reminiscent of pretty much any other alien type of book. I kept thinking about the Martian Chronicles because this is something that is very typical, right? You know, you have a spaceship full of people from Earth that gets sucked into a different dimension or a different universe, or just crash lands on some planet, and there is like a whole bunch of aliens, and they have to A, survive, and B, kind of, you know, navigate their way through knowing the language, not knowing the language, etc., etc. So I wouldn't call this the most original series, but I did enjoy it. However, it did not really pull me into the story, so I gave it only 3 stars, but the artwork was beautiful, so kind of check it out, have a look at it, let me know what you think. Next, I read quite randomly volumes 1 and 2 of this manga series, and it is called What Did You Eat Yesterday? So this is a very interesting manga series. I did not even expect it to have a lot of volumes, but apparently there are like 12 or 13 out right now. And this is a story about a gay couple who live together, and one of the main protagonists is very much into cooking. So essentially the whole manga is about those 2 guys living together, and this main protagonist cooking meals and providing recipes. So there are actual recipes throughout the book, so you get to see what he's cooking, and there are a lot of, so there are actual recipes, and there is a lot of cooking, like the process of cooking, and he's like standing at the stove and, you know, debating what to make and thinking about, oh, I have to, like, you know, do this and do that, and then you know, so this is slice of life, contemporary story. And what surprised me is that, first of all, there is this very specific niche market when it comes to yaoi or shonen ai or gay or boy love or whatever you want to call it, because there are a lot of names for the same thing in manga. But it's very different. It's very different because, first of all, it is a portrayal of just like a home-like family relationship, which is very very ordinary and is void of very typical power displays or, you know, power imbalance, because it's power imbalance overall is very typical for manga and depicting relationships, whether heterosexual or homosexual, it doesn't matter, because there is always some power imbalance. And I don't want to dwell much on it, because I feel as if I can talk a lot about that. Plus, I'm not sure if anyone is interested. However, I just wanted to say that I was surprised by how, I didn't even know what word to pick for this. This is a very nice manga. I think nice is the key word here. So there is no drama. It is slice of life. It is contemporary. It is cooking, which I thoroughly enjoy. Japanese cuisine is very interesting, so I do enjoy. There's really not much plot to this manga, because all those characters do is go to work, buy groceries, come home, cook dinner, and that's it. There's really nothing else. There are some mentions, because the main protagonist who loves to cook is also a lawyer, so sometimes there are mentions of his cases. But most of the time it's just him cooking and talking about how to be frugal, you know, how to save money. And seriously, they're living on a budget. They mention the budget there, and it's like 20,000, yeah, it's like 25,000 yen, which is roughly, I want to say 250 or maybe 280. I'm not really sure about the exchange rate right now, but it used to be like 100 yen was $1 US, so it was like 250, maybe, okay, 300 Canadian dollars a month for 2 people, which is insane. Like, you would not be able to survive in Canada, like, for like just spending that much on groceries. Anyway, I do enjoy the series. I have already requested volumes 3 and 4 from the library. I'm really enjoying them, but since there's really not much to the plot, there is no drama, there is nothing really happening except for sometimes a bit obscure cooking recipes. I think that some of the recipes, I think there might be some sort of translation you know, I don't want to see error, but it's sometimes something just reads really weirdly. Japanese language is really hard, okay? So Japanese language is hard, but when someone writes the recipe, it should be fairly simple. I don't think that salted cucumbers should be translated as salted cucumbers. I just assume it's pickles. Or lasagna noodles is the correct term, because I'm pretty sure it's lasagna pasta or lasagna sheets pasta, you know, it's not noodles. Anyway, I digress. I enjoyed it. I gave 3.5 stars to both volumes, and I will definitely continue with the series. And the last, but definitely not the least, was the book which I actually read the first, but I wanted to save it the last for my wrap-up because I wanted to talk about it, and that is The Love Interest by Cale Dietrich. And oh my god, I don't know where to start. First of all, I really enjoyed this book. This book does not have a very high rating on Goodreads, and it took me a while to understand why. Basically, I had to read almost to the very end, almost to like 50 or 60 pages shy of the ending, and only then I understood why this book does not have a high rating on Goodreads. So let me tell you about the story. This is a YA, slightly dystopian, slightly sci-fi, contemporary novel with very interesting premise. So there is an organization that cultivates and trains love interests. If there is a person who can potentially become really powerful or influential in the world, say become a president or a very well-known celebrity or scientist, those people are needed to be spied on. And for that, they needed love interests. So essentially there are people, men and women, or rather in this case, since it is a young adult, teenagers, young men and young women, who are trained to be perfect love interests. They are very physically fit, they are smart, and they're trained to become the chosen, like the one, that one love for the person that is given them, the chosen. So our main protagonist, who doesn't even have a name at the beginning, he is training to become the chosen, and he goes through the training. They all live in a secluded area that is pretty much reminiscent for like of any other sci-fi movie / dystopian world, and he lives on that in that organization. And finally, he passes the evaluation, and he is told to be finally chosen to work on this specific project. He is a good one. So there's always good people and bad people, and this is like a persona or a personality trait. So they're all tested to be either good or bad, and he's a good boy. So he is chosen to play a good boy and love interest to this girl who is very innovative, very scientific, and she potentially will become a very big scientist. But she needs to be spied on, that's why he's chosen. But there is also a bad boy who is chosen, and those two boys have to compete against each other, and whoever wins, and winning means that the girl has to kiss one of the boys, and basically commit and say, I love you. And once she chooses one of the boys, the other boy dies because he becomes unimportant, and basically the company, this organization, will get rid of that boy. But the twist of the story is that instead of falling for the same girl, those two boys fall for each other. And I did not know, but once I started to read this book, I realized that this book is actually supposed to be a satire, and it is a satire on all of the contemporary romance novels, and it's so epic and it's so wonderful and it's full of so many cliches of YA. There are so many contemporary tropes. Oh my god. Like the girl, like for example, the first meeting with this good boy, the girl just twists her ankle and falls on the stairs and he catches her and they're introduced to each other. Oh my god, it is hilarious. I loved all the tropes. They're obviously made fun of. They're not to be taken seriously, and bad boy tropes and everything. It's just like, it's such a huge joke, and it's such a good satire on the whole society and about how people are supposed to be this picture perfect, and you know, how people are supposed to look like or how they're supposed to behave. And those two boys have their own coaches who kind of tell them, oh, this girl is going to be there, oh, she has a class there, you have to go there and kind of like sit under the tree and be all moody and read a book of poetry, you know what I mean? Oh my god, this was fantastic. I loved it. But when we got to the point when some things started to unravel and we started to understand that there is like something else has to happen, and this organization is so big and the threat of death is so real, that this is where things started to get weird. And I have a feeling, and I don't want to say anything bad about the author because this is a debut novel, and very few debut novels are perfect. Let's be honest, there are a lot of debut novels which are not perfect, but it does not mean that the author cannot write. This book, I feel, was written really well for 2/3 of it, but then 1/3 was basically the author scrambling and trying to get to the very ending. I have a feeling as if Kale had a very, vivid image about how he wanted this book to end, but he wasn't sure how to get there. So 1/3, the ending of the book was very rushed. There were a lot of Deus Ex Machina moments, which means that something felt very unnatural, and some things were dealt with very, way too easily. Because if you have this huge problem, this huge organization, which is super strong, which is super influential, which obviously has spies everywhere, plus they have deadly machines that will basically go and kill you if you do not do what they want. And this bunch of teenagers just go, infiltrates this organization. Apparently they have only one headquarters somewhere, and gets rid of this huge machine. It just doesn't feel plausible. It's not actually a spoiler, or maybe it is a spoiler and I'm sorry if it is, but it just felt really way too simple to end things like that. I'm not going to say anything else because a huge part of that all is a relationship, and I'm not saying anything about that, but I did enjoy the relationship. There were a lot of, tropes and a lot of very predictable moments, but at the same time I enjoyed it. I just feel that if the ending did not go into this direction, I would have enjoyed this book way more. But it was a fun read. I do not regret buying this book. I might actually reread it because it's so full of tropes and it's so cliched. It's super fun. Honestly, it's super fun. There is one book that I can think of, and that would be Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. And I hated that book. I hated Beauty Queens, but if you liked Beauty Queens, you'll probably like this book because it's kind of in the same vein, but not so ridiculously fantastical as Beauty Queens. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I really like the idea of that there are certain, spies along famous people and celebrities and people of power, and I liked how this whole organization is set up with, choosing the love interests and trying to predict the way people would behave in certain situations. I really enjoyed it. However, I do feel that the ending could have been much better. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars. Unfortunately, I hoped to make it a 4-star read, but unfortunately it was only 3 stars. But still, I enjoyed it, and I discovered a new author, and hopefully he will produce more books that I will read in some future. So yeah, this is it. Unfortunately, not as many books as I hoped to read during this readathon, but still, I'm proud of myself. And finally, I read one of the books which actually came out not like years ago, but fairly recent. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Please check out my blog post with my TBR and a bit more information. And once I have written the review for the love interest on my blog, I'll provide the link down below as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!